Welcome to the video. In this video we're going to be taking a look at these two what appear to be identical radios. The reason that we're looking at these is because there's been two versions of these FS or FlySky FS-i6s radios, because now with the latest firmware update they actually now support 10 channels, and there's two versions available. This one that we've been using in our quadcopter building for beginners series, and this newer version as well, which has a couple of little changes, and I want to run through both of these so that if you're interested in this radio you are going to be making a decision with all of the facts. So the first radio we're going to look at before we get to the later newer black version, and that version is available in white as well, but this was the original one. This is the one that we've been using as part of our series. Now we had to do a couple of adaptations onto this little guy. First of all, we had to take it apart to remove the throttle spring, so you can watch that video where we go through that process if you're interested. We also upgraded the firmware to the very latest version, and that allows us to access 10 channels, and also gave us some really cool features too. So if I just power this on, they're very musical little radios these, and go into the settings, we now have system and function, and you can tell that this is the, let's put it onto the model that I'm actually using. You can tell it's the latest version of the firmware because you have these additional functions. Things like you now have rate and expo, you have things like throttle curves that you can set up, and all of this is now available with 10 channels as well. So if we go back to the main screen and I go across, if I scroll down, there are all of our 10 channels. Now this radio came with a 6-channel receiver that also provided a PPM output, and that's the one that we've been using in that series with that quadcopter build, and it's worked really well. I've been quite impressed with this radio. Alright, the gimbals aren't the most fantastic in the world, but they're very usable. There are the switches on the top that have two two-position switches. We have two 3-position switches, and we also have these momentary switches on the back. Runs on 4 AA batteries, and it's not a bad little radio. There are some things that are missing from it though, which is there are no trim adjustments by the side of the controls, which an aircraft pilot is going to rely on. So if you are looking for an aircraft radio, this is probably not the one for you. It doesn't have things inside like delta mixing and those kind of things that you'd need as a fixed wing pilot, but for a multi-copter pilot and something that's rather cheap and cheerful that comes with a receiver and everything, it's definitely worth looking at. Now the other cute thing that comes with it is this device here. Now this is actually a mount for an FPV screen or an iPhone or something like that, and the way it works is it just screws onto the top. That screw then goes into the side so it doesn't move, and then what it provides is a place for you to put potentially an FPV screen or your phone or whatever. Now the really nice thing about this is that if you press a little button on the side, the top pops up and you can set it for whatever size you need for the tablet that you're using or the FPV screen. This actually fits beautifully on things like my Black Pearl Diversity FPV screen. I've also been playing with it with the eSheen 5802D screen we have. Or if you pop those two bits in, then you've got enough room there for something like an iPhone. Let me do these screws up and won't be wobbling around. Things like an iPhone or an Android phone, all those kind of things as well. So that's quite a nice little touch. The really cute thing is it actually folds down beautifully so that you can transport it too. So you know that tick V good, that's a really good feature. So this radio, I must admit, I'm quite a fan of. The things that I didn't like about it though were the fact that we had to do that throttle change, and the lack of those trim buttons, because I'm a fixed wing pilot as well, was a little bit of a shame. But if you're looking to just build a quadcopter and you're looking for a cheap and cheerful radio that will do that for you, then this is definitely worth a look. Now both of the radios that we're looking at here are available from banggood.com. I'll put a link in the description so you can have a look at each of them if you're interested in. And let's have a look at the other version. So we'll turn this one off. They're very musical, these radios. And we'll get the newer version that comes with the 10-channel firmware already installed. So this is an identical radio in terms of the layout. We have the two momentary switches at the back, we have the same switch layouts, the gimbals are the same as well. There's no real differences that I can see or feel, but it comes with the throttle stick already set for no spring return, which is brilliant. It means that if you fancy one of these radios but didn't like the idea of the first job cracking the back off it and taking parts out, then that's already taken care of. And I'm really pleased that FlySky have done that, because an awful lot of pilots would be put off getting the radio by having to do that as their first job. If we power it up, it has a slightly different start, but again you can see that we have all of the 10 channels here. Now this one does have another firmware update. The firmware update will also give you those additional features. If I go into the menu here, you'll notice that it's a much more basic menu than the other one had, and that's because this one doesn't have the firmware on it yet. If you go onto the Banggood page for this product and scroll down, you'll actually find the firmware update. It's really straightforward. You just plug the cable in the bottom and go through the process, and we have a video that goes through that in case you're interested in watching how it all works. It's relatively quick and easy, but I would recommend that if you get one of these radios, I'd upgrade the firmware first before you start setting everything up. Binding the receiver to these radios is actually really straightforward. Now the other thing you get with this radio over the other one, with the other version you got a 6-channel receiver. With this version you get a 10-channel receiver that again supports PPM out too. To bind the receiver to the radio is a really straightforward this FlySky kit. First of all, what you have to do is plug the bind plug into the receiver, and at the top it says BVCC. You just plug the bind plug that you get as part of the kit in there. Power the receiver using the 5-volt supply from whatever it is that you're doing. Once it's powered, you'll notice that the LED will flash. Then you go into the menu, find the bit that says receiver bind, click on that, and it'll say binding to receiver. It'll take a second or two, and then it'll all be finished, and it's that fast. Then you just unplug the bind plug from the receiver, and next time you power it up, it'll connect and you'll be good to go. A couple of things then, extra things you get with this radio above the other one is obviously you get the 10-channel receiver, which I would say is probably a little bit big if you're going to use it with a smaller quad, but you can use a 6-channel receiver or a smaller one like we've done with the other radio. That will still bind to this and work fine, and you'll be able to get up to 8 channels out of the PPM output, which means that you can control everything without having that big receiver on the model. The other things you get with this radio then are you get the spring and the rocker and all the other pieces that we had to take out of the other radio if you wanted to respring your throttle. I'm not sure why you'd ever want to do that, but it's lovely that they've included those parts in here. You get a really nice manual that goes through the process of actually how you replace that spring if you really needed to. Again, handy to keep around and explains how you do everything, but again, we did that in the other video if you're interested in seeing it. The last thing I'll talk about then is this piece here. Now this is the updated version of that original holder. Works in the same way. There's this big screw at the back that goes into the back hole, and then there's a side screw that goes through the front. Now the older version had the ability to kind of flip down the sides. This one doesn't. The way it works is that you undo this little thumb screw at the back, this top piece slides, and you can put the pieces in. The only thing that I've struggled with is that this thing in the middle, which is obviously there to support you putting something like an iPhone or something in it, I'm guessing should be removable, but I can't for the life of me figure out how to do it. So if anyone knows the trick to get that piece out so that you can easily fit a nice tablet or an FPV screen onto this mount, that would be really helpful. So in summary, there are 2 versions of this radio. There is the older version that we have used that came with a sprung throttle, and there's the new version which has all of that stuff taken care of and also comes with the larger receiver as well. So now you know what the difference is between these 2 versions. This version is also available in white if you're interested. I think for the money they provide an awful lot of bang for the buck. They're very capable, inexpensive radios that I've been quite impressed with. A lot of the other budget radios that we've been playing with has one compromise too many, but these seem to have all the functions that you'd want as a multi-rotor pilot without any of the downsides. The range seems reasonable. You know, that if you're looking to create a park flying model and build your first multi-rotor, this is definitely what you should be looking at. Personally, I'd probably consider this version here if you weren't up to taking the radio apart as the first job and taking throttle springs out. But do remember, the receiver that it comes with is 10 channel, but that might be a little bit big for smaller 250 or smaller craft. Thank you for taking the time to watch that video. There are lots of other videos on the channel and they're carefully ordered into playlists, so you may find that there are other videos on this same subject that you can go and watch. So I would recommend going into the playlist area of Painless 360 YouTube channel and looking around and seeing what there is. You never know what you might find. Thanks for watching. Please like, subscribe, and happy flying.